Now, if you look at a grinder in its most simplest form, you've got a body, a motor, a set of burrs, and sometimes a spattering of other features here and there, but there hasn't really been a whole lot of tech involved. But the grinder we're looking at today is pretty interesting with how it sort of rolls classic simplicity of a Eureka grinder into a unique and useful form of technology through a partnership with Lucca. So as you maybe already guessed from the title or the thumbnail, today we're looking at the Lucca Atom 75, which is an espresso grinder that carries some serious stats, like a 75mm set of hardened steel flat burrs and a 90-watt motor that rips through beans at 1400 RPM. But also it's the first IoT or Internet of Things connected coffee grinder using the TrueGrind system and digitally tracked burr placement, which through the TrueGrind app claims to give you a recommended grind setting for a wide range of coffees from many popular roasters, promising a dialed-in shot from dose 1. All of this together sounds pretty interesting, and it definitely piqued my curiosity with these new tech features. Plus, I've had a lot of requests for the original Eureka Atom 75 to be reviewed, and this is sort of a two birds with one stone sort of scenario. So a big thank you to the folks at Clive Coffee who loaned me this grinder and also agreed to my review terms of no access to the content of this video prior to release. So we're going to dive directly into it after a quick word from this week's sponsor, STANDART Magazine. If you're into coffee, its culture, and learning about the world around it, STANDART Magazine is the perfect addition to your brew bar or coffee table. With quarterly releases, they shed light on issues both inside and outside of the cafe, highlighting people who elevate the industry, and deep dives into new ideas around all things coffee. To sweeten the deal, each issue also comes with a sample of coffee from some of the world's best roasters, to give you the full sensory experience. You can't really beat the combination of fresh coffee and fresh print. So head over to standartmag.com/Sprometheus, use the link down in the description, or use code Sprometheus at checkout to snag $5 off your very own subscription of coffee and culture, shipped direct to your door nearly anywhere in the world. And if you're still on the fence, you can use their new Try It First program where all you pay is the cost of shipping. There's really not a whole lot to lose. As I mentioned earlier in the intro, the Lucca Atom 75 has a really unique feature of being able to give grind size recommendations, or grind size predictions, but before that, let's talk about some of the more typical things first. Inside the Atom, there is a set of 75mm hardened steel flat burrs, which are made in-house by Eureka and have a traditional bimodal style geometry, which is common for most espresso applications. And those burrs are powered by a 900-watt motor that spins them at 1400 RPM. And when it comes to grinding, the touchscreen sort of acts as your guide or your main control hub. On it, you can go through your settings, check your paired coffees, and select either timed or continuous grinding. And both are engaged via a button designed to be pressed by your portafilter, allowing for hands-free operation. So with the basics out of the way, let's get into the more unique tech features. For one, the grinder digitally tracks your burr position and displays it as a numeric number. That means as you spin the stepless dial, you can see the size shift on the screen in real time. Then when the grinder is paired with the TrueGrind application, you can connect up to 4 active coffees from a large list of preloaded options. Then once you choose the coffee you're grinding, you'll get a TrueGrind recommended setting to assist you in the dial-in. Now that we've covered all of its mechanical stats and tech features, let's see how these two come together off the spec sheet and on the bar. And considering the base grinder of the Lucca Atom 75 is built by Eureka, which has 100+ years of grinder experience, there aren't a lot of surprises in its performance. Starting up top, the Lucca Atom has a classic Eureka stepless adjustment knob, but the screen gives you an actual number to track your dial in, and each number up or down represents a 5-micron change. The Lucca Atom also has Eureka's ACE system, which is essentially anti-clump and anti-static, but I will say it does have some small clumping when you're grinding finer for smaller doses, which is something that's been pretty common for the Eureka grinders I've used in the past. But generally the grinds are pretty fluffy and uniform, especially for doses over 17 grams, and also the grinding itself is done very quickly. I don't think I've ever gone over 3 seconds to get up to 20 grams, so if you're doing the math, the Lucca Atom is kicking out nearly 7 grams a second. By now, you've probably realized the Lucca Atom 75 isn't designed as a single-dose grinder, but it actually does a decent job at doing it. But you will need to up the grind time, so it has more time to whip out any retained grinds. When I tested it with standard grind times for the dose used, there was an average of about half a gram retained. But when you increase the time to about double what's needed to actually grind the beans, the extra grinds get whipped out and it reduces the retention to a more acceptable single-dose level, averaging around 0.2 grams or less. And of course, I definitely should mention that the coffee brewed from its grinds is properly tasty and well extracted. But much like the other Eureka grinders I've tried, it really excels in creating a traditional shot of espresso. meaning it's very well balanced and has a more round, a more viscous mouthfeel, but this does come to the detriment of clarity and acidity. I did find myself enjoying those more well-developed, medium roast and above coffees on this grinder than I did the light, more nuanced modern roasts. And the same statement in terms of cup quality applies to grinding coarse, as it does adjust far enough for most filter coffee methods. So essentially, when you take these more traditionally designed bimodal espresso burrs and you pair them with higher speeds, it creates more fines, and the more fines really amps up the complexity, but it also tamps down the clarity. And finally, we've got to chat about the TrueGrind app and its performance when paired with the grinder. Now, I do think this system is relatively useful, and it has been fairly accurate in getting me in range of a proper espresso out of the box. But having tried a handful of coffees that are already in their system, I found that the grind recommendations tend to really only fluctuate a few notches, between 39 and 43 for me, which honestly makes sense because on most espresso-focused grinders, I don't think many of us find ourselves going too far off our dial-in. Yet I couldn't help but notice the different methods on the grinder tend to not change the recommended grind much, if at all, which is a little surprising since the yields and times can shift dramatically. But it does reduce waste, and it is accurate enough to get you in the ballpark for a tasty shot, so I do see its appeal for those who are maybe a bit less experienced. I know I've mentioned this before, and considering the direction that modern coffee equipment is going, I'll probably mention it again, but I'm just not a huge fan of companion apps, especially when they have features that aren't available on the hardware itself, and the Lucca Atom definitely falls into that category. So there's really no way to set your machine, browse coffees, or get grind recommendations outside of downloading the TrueGrind app and pairing your grinder. Also, when it comes to programmable grinding, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship when it comes to timers. Of course, you can dial it in, and the consistency can be pretty solid, but any changes to the grind size or even the environment can cause a shift in the dose, which often left me over or underdosing throughout the day and having to make adjustments and keeping a little cup of grinds nearby to remove from or add to the basket. So in the end, I think this method of measurement is just better suited for those looking for speed over accuracy. Also, I couldn't help but notice that there's a slow creep in the grind adjustment, especially when using the pulse function. It appears to be caused by the motor's torque, and you can see how it affects the grind knob as the motor engages. And finally, it's not available outside the US market. Since Lucca is a collaboration between Eureka and the US-based distributor Clive Coffee, the brand is only available through Clive, which limits its reach. And that's a shame, because personally I tend to prefer its user interface and screen design even without the app more than the standard Eureka design. Having had the Lucca Atom 75 for a couple months now, I have to say I've been pretty happy with its overall workflow and the cups it produces. Its usability is straightforward, its grinding is fast and focused, and the tech features can add a little more simplicity to your coffee routine. Plus, considering its Eureka internals, you kinda know what you're in for. They're solid pieces of engineering and they've been in the coffee grinding game for over a century, so there's not a whole lot of doubt there. And outside of the issues with grind by time, which are common to all grinders with this style of dosing, and my aversion to companion apps, performance-wise I only really found myself wanting a bit more from those lighter, fruitier coffees. Over the past couple of years, I've had a few Eurekas on my bar, and they've all been more than capable, but their general burr design tends to lean more towards the traditional espresso category. It's not a bad thing, but it is a preference thing, so if you're coming into this chasing a more delicate, nuanced flavor, you may want to consider something with a slightly more modern burr set, as 75mm options are fairly limited. And with all that said, I think it's time as usual to pass the conversation on to you. What are your thoughts on the Atom? And also, what are your thoughts on Eureka's burrs? Have you tried them in the past, and has your experience in the cup mirrored mine? And also, last but not least, what are your thoughts on companion apps for coffee equipment? Drop your answers to those questions and any others you may have in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Check out my Instagram @Sprometheus for content throughout the week. And as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.